In August 1944, as Patton's Third Army surged across France, a wave of panic gripped the German high command. Towns fell daily, divisions crumbled, and the relentless American advance threatened to shatter their entire defensive line. In a desperate gamble, they unleashed their ultimate weapon, the Tigers. 72 of Germany's most formidable heavy tanks, renowned for their impenetrable armor and devastating 88mm guns, were hurled directly into Patton's path. On paper, these Tigers should have been an insurmountable barrier, each one capable of decimating multiple American Shermans before sustaining damage. Yet, what unfolded became a masterclass in how superior tactics, coordination, and sheer speed could dismantle technological might. By the battle's end, fewer than 10 Tigers remained operational. The rest lay destroyed, abandoned, or captured, and Patton's advance barely faltered. This is the story of how American ingenuity and resolve crushed Germany's elite armor, and how the myth of the invincible Tiger tank met its end in the French countryside. To truly appreciate this feat, we must first understand the terror the Panzer VI Tiger inspired. This 56-ton behemoth of steel boasted armor so thick that most Allied anti-tank rounds simply ricocheted off its front. Its most terrifying feature was the 88mm gun, capable of destroying any Allied tank at ranges where Allied tanks couldn't even scratch the Tiger. American tank crews lived in fear of these machines. A single Tiger could bring an entire column to a halt. The American Sherman, the workhorse of Patton's army, was woefully outgunned and out-armored. It typically took 4 or 5 Shermans to bring down one Tiger, with the Tigers often claiming 3 or 4 Shermans in return. The brutal math of direct engagement heavily favored the Tiger. German propaganda glorified them, and Allied soldiers, in their dread, called them invincible. However, the Tigers had critical weaknesses that Patton understood better than most Allied commanders. First, they were slow. Their maximum road speed was an optimistic 25 miles per hour, and off-road they lumbered. They simply couldn't effectively pursue a retreating enemy. Second, they were mechanically temperamental. The Tiger's complex transmission and engine were prone to frequent breakdowns. For every Tiger lost in combat, another was abandoned due to mechanical failure. Third, they were fuel guzzlers, achieving less than 1 mile per gallon. In 1944, Germany faced severe fuel shortages, meaning Tigers often ran out of gas before even reaching the battlefield. Fourth, and most crucially, Tigers excelled in defensive positions. Hull down, firing from long range, their advantages were overwhelming. But when forced to maneuver, attack, or react to fast-moving situations, their limitations became glaring. The Germans were fully aware of these drawbacks, but by August 1944, desperation had set in. Patton's Third Army was moving with such incredible speed that conventional defenses were proving useless. They needed a superweapon, something that could halt the American armor. So, they committed nearly a full battalion of Tigers, 72 tanks, to stop Patton's advance. It should have worked. It should have at least slowed him down. It didn't. While other Allied commanders harbored a healthy fear of Tigers, Patton had developed specific strategies to defeat them. He had meticulously studied German tank doctrine, understanding that Tigers, while powerful, were inflexible. He knew they relied on long-range firepower and heavy armor, and he devised ways to neutralize these advantages. Patton's anti-Tiger tactics revolved around 5 core principles. First, never fight them on their terms. Tigers craved long-range duels where their superior gun and armor dominated. Patton's answer was simple: deny them that fight. Use terrain, smoke, and aggressive maneuver to close the distance or attack from angles where their armor was weakest. Second, Employ combined arms. Tigers were nearly invulnerable to other tanks in a head-on engagement, but they were susceptible to artillery, air support, and infantry armed with anti-tank weapons. Patton's strategy was to coordinate everything simultaneously, overwhelming them with threats from multiple directions. Third, attack their supply lines. Tigers demanded constant fuel and ammunition, and were a logistical nightmare to maintain. Find their supply depots, bomb their fuel convoys, and force them to move. They would break down on their own. Fourth, maintain relentless movement. Tigers were fundamentally defensive weapons. If you stayed in one place, they would find you and destroy you from afar. But if you kept advancing, kept them off balance, and forced them to constantly reposition, their mechanical weaknesses would do half the work for you. Fifth, accept casualties. This was a harsh truth Patton grasped that others didn't. Yes, engaging Tigers would cost American tanks and lives, but trying to avoid Tigers cost time, and time allowed the Germans to organize stronger defenses. Better to suffer losses and keep moving than to halt and give the Germans a chance to prepare. Patton drilled these principles into his commanders without mercy. Tank commanders were forbidden from retreating when they encountered Tigers. Artillery officers were trained to respond to Tiger sightings within minutes. Fighter-bomber pilots were given top priority for anti-tank missions. The result was that Patton's Third Army didn't just fight Tigers differently. They hunted them. In late August 1944, the specific location is less important than the unfolding drama. German intelligence had anticipated Patton's routes and positioned their Tigers in classic defensive setups, hull down behind terrain features, guns covering open fields where American armor would have to advance. It was textbook-heavy armor deployment. American tanks were supposed to advance across open ground, be annihilated by long-range Tiger fire, and the advance would stall, buying the Germans precious time to establish a proper defensive line. That's what should have happened. Instead, Patton's reconnaissance units spotted the Tigers before the main American force even arrived. Within hours, Patton had reorganized his advance. Multiple columns, different routes, constant movement. When American forces did encounter the Tigers, they didn't attempt a head-on engagement. Instead, they unleashed massive artillery barrages, not to destroy the Tigers, whose armor was too thick, but to suppress them. This forced the crews to button up, closing hatches and losing vital visibility. While the Tigers were under shell fire, American tank destroyers, faster than Shermans and equipped with larger guns specifically designed to pierce German armor, moved into flanking positions. Their goal wasn't to survive a direct fight, but to get side shots where Tiger armor was weakest. Then came the fighter-bombers. Patton had ensured continuous close air support. P-47 Thunderbolts, armed with rockets and bombs, couldn't always destroy Tigers from above, but they could damage tracks, force crews to abandon positions, and, crucially, amplify the chaos and psychological pressure. German Tiger crews found themselves under simultaneous attack from multiple directions. Artillery from one side, tank destroyers maneuvering on their flanks, aircraft overhead. And through it all, American Shermans kept advancing, not stopping to engage, but pushing relentlessly toward objectives beyond the Tiger positions. This was precisely what Tigers couldn't handle. They were designed for long-range duels, not this coordinated multi-threat onslaught. The first Tigers succumbed not to heroic tank duels, but to mundane vulnerabilities. One Tiger threw a track attempting to reposition under artillery fire. Immobilized, the crew abandoned it before American forces even reached it. Another Tiger ran out of fuel. The supply convoy had been destroyed by Patton's fighter bombers 20 miles back. The crew tried to tow it with another Tiger. Both broke down, and were abandoned. 3 Tigers were destroyed by tank destroyers that had flanked their positions while the Tigers were preoccupied with Shermans to their front. Side armor penetrated, ammunition exploded, catastrophic kills. 2 Tigers were hit by P-47 rockets. One had its track destroyed and was abandoned. The other took a rocket through the engine deck, igniting a fire that forced the crew out. Here's the crucial part. All of this happened in less than 6 hours. German commanders had expected their Tigers to hold for days. They lasted hours because Patton didn't stop. He didn't pause to consolidate after encountering Tigers. He didn't pull back and meticulously plan a careful assault. He threw everything he had at them: artillery, air support, tank destroyers, and kept his main force advancing. By nightfall of the first day, over 20 Tigers were destroyed or abandoned. The remaining crews were shattered. They had expected to dominate the battlefield. Instead, they were being hunted from multiple directions by an enemy that refused to stop or slow down. German tank commanders sent desperate pleas for infantry support, air cover, and better communication with artillery. But Patton's relentless advance had already disrupted German command and control. Requests were delayed or went unanswered. Tigers, intended to be the centerpiece of a coordinated defense, were instead fighting isolated, unsupported battles. The second day was even worse. American forces had pinpointed the Tiger positions. Artillery barrages targeted these locations before dawn. Tank destroyers moved into ambush positions under the cover of night. When the Tigers attempted to reposition at first light, they were already bracketed. More Tigers fell to mechanical breakdowns. The constant movement, the immense stress on crews, the lack of proper maintenance facilities, it all took its toll. Tigers that could have fought effectively from prepared positions broke down during movement. By the end of the second day, German commanders recognized that the Tiger deployment had utterly failed. Not because Tigers were bad tanks, they were excellent, but because Patton's tactics and tempo had transformed their strengths into liabilities. By the third day, German commanders ordered the surviving Tigers to withdraw. But retreating Tigers faced all the same problems that had destroyed them in combat. They were slow. American forces were faster. Tigers attempting to retreat were caught by pursuing tank destroyers and destroyed from behind, where their armor was weakest. They needed fuel, but supply lines were disrupted. Some Tigers ran out of fuel during the retreat and were blown up by their own crews to prevent capture. They broke down. The mechanical stress of combat and rapid repositioning caused transmission failures, engine problems, and track breaks. Disabled Tigers littered the retreat route. And through it all, Patton's forces never let up. American artillery pounded retreat routes. Fighter bombers strafed German columns. Tank destroyers harassed the flanks of any German force attempting to establish a rearguard. This was Patton's approach in action. Never let the enemy recover. Never give them time to regroup. Push constantly. Maintain pressure. Make retreat as costly as defense. One captured German officer later told interrogators, "We expected a battle. What we got was a pursuit. Your forces never stopped long enough for us to establish a defensive position." That was the genius of Patton's approach. He understood that Tigers were most dangerous when static and prepared, so he ensured they were never static, never prepared, always reacting, always under pressure. By the time the surviving Tigers managed to withdraw beyond Patton's immediate area of operations, the toll was devastating. Of the 72 Tigers committed to stopping Patton's advance, fewer than 10 were still operational. The rest were destroyed in combat, abandoned due to mechanical failure, captured by American forces, or blown up by their own crews to prevent capture. The road ahead of Patton's Third Army lay wide open. The superweapon designed to stop him hadn't even slowed him down. So, what went wrong? How did Germany's most feared weapon fail so completely? The answer reveals fundamental truths about warfare that extend far beyond World War II. Superior technology doesn't guarantee victory. Tigers were technically superior to Shermans in almost every specification. But warfare isn't a technical competition. It's about systems, tactics, and execution. Tactics beat specifications. Patton's combined arms approach, coordinating tanks, artillery, air support, and tank destroyers, overwhelmed the Tiger's individual superiority. One Tiger was better than one Sherman. But one Tiger couldn't handle simultaneous threats from artillery, aircraft, and multiple ground units. Speed and tempo matter more than firepower. Tigers could destroy more American tanks per engagement, but Patton's forces engaged, disengaged, and moved so fast that Tigers couldn't leverage their firepower advantage consistently. Logistics determine effectiveness. Tigers required fuel, ammunition, and maintenance. Patton's advance disrupted German supply lines so thoroughly that many Tigers became useless, not because they were destroyed, but because they couldn't be supported. Morale and psychological factors are decisive. Tiger crews went into battle expecting to dominate. When they found themselves instead being hunted, suppressed, and destroyed in ways they weren't prepared for, their effectiveness plummeted. The fundamental problem was doctrinal. Germany had designed the Tiger for defensive battles, holding ground, covering retreats, counter-attacking to restore defensive lines. They were using Tigers in precisely the role they were designed for, but Patton's tempo was so rapid that defensive battles never materialized. By the time Tigers were positioned to defend, American forces were already past them, flanking them, or calling in airstrikes. The battle the Germans wanted to fight never happened. This is why Patton succeeded where other Allied commanders struggled against Tigers. Other commanders fought the battle the Tigers were designed for: methodical advances, tank versus tank duels, set-piece engagements. Patton refused to fight that battle. He waged a battle of movement, combined arms, and relentless pressure. A battle where the Tiger's advantages didn't matter, and its weaknesses became fatal. After the battle, American intelligence officers interviewed captured German tank crews. Their assessments were remarkably consistent. They hadn't been defeated by better tanks. American Shermans were still inferior in direct combat. They had been defeated by better tactics and better coordination. One German tank commander lamented, "We never fought the same enemy twice. First artillery, then aircraft, then tank destroyers, then infantry. By the time we oriented to one threat, two more appeared. We could not fight effectively when everything was happening at once." That was Patton's doctrine. Everything at once, all the time, never stopping. The destruction of this Tiger battalion had strategic implications beyond just the tactical defeat. German High Command had committed their best armor to stop Patton, and it had failed completely. This shattered any illusions that superweapons could compensate for American material and tactical advantages. It also amplified Patton's already fearsome reputation among German commanders. They already dreaded his speed and aggression. Now they feared his ability to dismantle their best weapons. When German intelligence identified Patton's forces in a sector, commanders knew they couldn't rely on defensive positions or superior equipment. They needed overwhelming numbers, or they needed to retreat. For American forces, the battle proved that Tigers could be beaten. Not easily, not without cost, but consistently, if proper tactics were employed and an aggressive tempo maintained. American tank crews who had been terrified of Tigers learned they could win, not through better tanks — the Sherman never became the equal of the Tiger — but through better employment, better coordination, and better leadership. 72 Tigers, Germany's superweapon, rushed to stop Patton's advance. Fewer than 10 survived. This wasn't a miracle. It wasn't luck. It was the result of superior tactics, better coordination, and a commander who understood that speed and pressure could defeat superior technology. The Tigers failed not because they were bad tanks. They were excellent tanks. They failed because they were used in a battle they weren't designed for, against a commander who refused to fight on their terms. Patton's lesson is timeless. When facing a superior enemy, don't fight them where they're strong. Change the nature of the battle. Use speed, coordination, and relentless pressure to create situations where their advantages simply don't matter. The Germans sent their best weapons to stop Patton. What they discovered is that the best weapons in the world don't matter if your enemy won't let you use them effectively. The road ahead lay wide open, and Patton never looked back. What do you think made the difference? American tactics or German mistakes? Share your thoughts in the comments below.